was mental. Literally, I was fast asleep and then out of nowhere, absolute wild animal on the end. I'm out. Who? Oh, you absolute. Welcome to episode 2 of the LewDog vlog. Bit of a different setting for our links today, and that's because got a busy day in the office, meetings all day, so me and Brad are just catching an hour together to get the links for this episode 2. So we're going to kick off pretty much where we left off in the episode 1. So we're now up to the weekend of the 10th to the 12th of May. I was back on the ski pit for a 2-night session. At this stage I've been baiting the ski straight area of the lake and an area we call the dog leg for about 3 or 4 weeks. Every other day going down, plying bait. If I've been fishing, I was baiting. If I wasn't fishing, I was still going up and baiting. And for this particular trip, I was quite excited to get out because I've just received a batch of corkball pop-ups from Coda Pops. Great service. I ordered them, and I think within 2 days they were at my home. And they looked perfect for what I wanted. So I was out with those for the first time, and I got to the lake. I was met with quite a bit of weed from the last time I'd fished it, and due to the weed and the range I was going to be fishing, decided to roll out a bit of an old classic that sits in my garage and doesn't get used a lot, but when it does, it makes me look super carpy. Friday afternoon, the week's work is done. And the rods are out. Check that bad boy out. The old Sky Pod. Don't get used that often in my fishing, but I'm using it this weekend. The reason being, I'm fishing at good range, short of the buoys that you can see there, but about 100 odd yards. And there's a lot of weed between me and the spots I'm fishing. So, by having the Sky Pod, just allows me to fish the tips high, keep my lines out of the weed as much as possible out to the spot. If I get a bite, last thing I want is 100 yards of weed around my line to deal with. Unfortunately, I didn't catch anything that night. In fact, it was a very quiet night. I didn't hear or see anything in that ski straight area. So I decided that a move of swims was in order for the second night. So I packed everything up and went round to the dogleg area. Again, an area I've been baiting for several weeks, and I decided to do the night there. But due to the change of swim, there was no need to use the Sky Pod anymore, so I packed that away, put that in the van, and I got out my Black Label Compact Pod, which is the pod I would normally be using. And you know, for fishing at 50 yards range, sort of semi-slack lines, it's perfect for what I was trying to achieve. But sadly, again, a very quiet night, and like I say, we're sort of in the middle of May now, and I would have expected to have caught some fish from the lake by now, but the weather just really was out of sorts early part of May, and the fish weren't having it. Sunday morning, I had to pack away early, which would normally annoy me, but actually on this occasion I was actually really excited because myself and my partner Abby, although I'm not allowed to call her my partner anymore since we got engaged in March. Apparently she's my fiance, not my partner, so I better get that right. Yes, so my fiance Abby and myself, we went to pick up the carp dog. We'd named her Piper. and we'd been waiting for a few weeks before we could finally go and pick her up. So we went to Partridge Guns, which is a dog breeding kennels that my uncle and auntie own. They also have a gun shop there. They sell shotguns and country clothing and stuff. And they've had years of expertise in breeding gun dogs and dogs for domestic use as well. And yeah, I knew we were getting a really, really good dog with fantastic pedigree. So we went to pick her up. And yeah, we were absolutely buzzing to get her home and start training her and getting her to be part of our life. So with the dog settled in at home, it was time for me to start thinking about fishing again. And that was only, I think, 2 or 3 days later. I left Abby with a dog and I was off for an overnighter back down on the big lake, obviously. When I'd left on the Sunday before going to pick the dog up, I'd baited both the dog leg area and the ski straight area. Mad day at work, straight down to the lake. Routine of getting the boat out, battery in there, engine on, aquascoping, mixing some bait up, getting the rigs ready. Went through a whole process, got the rods out, and then put some dinner on, and I felt pretty confident, I must admit. So I decided to try and streamline everything, just use storm poles rather than a pod. And also the second change I decided to make from the previous trip was to ditch the 23-pound mono mainline and go with a submerged braid instead. I'm fishing at just short of 100 yards range over a lot of weed, so I want to use the braid rather than a mono. 2 reasons for that. 1, fantastic abrasion resistance. When you're playing a fish through that weed, the braid just cuts through it and gives you far better chance of landing fish than the mono. And the second one, the bite indication. Again, at long range with your line going through a lot of weed with mono, the fish could move quite a long way without getting much registration at the bite alarm end. But with the braid, with no stretch, tight lines, literally as soon as that lead moves a millimetre, with the Springer arm indicator, I know that something's happening. And whether that's a tench doing me or a carp picking me up, I want to know about it so I can react to it. So those 2 changes were made. Now, early on the first day morning before I had to go to work, I actually received my first bite from a carp this year on the lake. And after a bit of a fraught battle, a lovely old 26-pounder was in my net and I was absolutely made up. Right, first bite of the spring campaign on the ski pit. The overnighter was well worth it. Look at this, rod's just rattled off with this absolute ancient 26 pounds bang on. Its skin's all rough like sandpaper. It looks prehistoric. It's an incredible old fish. I'm not going to keep her out long, she looks so old, I want to get her back. Just got the 1 rod left now. Still got about an hour and a half before I have to go to work, so I'm going to leave that 1 rod. I'm not going to put the rod back out, I've just caught this off. I think there's a chance of another bite yet. I'm really buzzing with this one though, if I don't get another. What a great start to the spring, and the effort of pre-baiting and getting down and doing an overnighter well and truly paid off. Awesome, let's get her back. Now I'd have been going to work a very happy man with that 26-pounder. All that effort was paying off. However, things were about to get a little bit better for me, and a fish of nearly 10 pounds bigger decided to pay me a visit before I had to reel in and head home for work. What an overnighter this has turned out to be, I can't believe it. The other rod's gone. Fraught battle for the weed, managed to land it from the bank though. Braided mainline helping, cutting up through the weed. And yeah, I've landed myself a 35-pound for awesome big pit mirror. I can't wait to show you. Lovely old fish, a couple of real big old scales on it. Some little spangly scales down by its tail. Have a look at her. Up she comes. Oh. Look at that. Putting the dorsal up as well for the camera. I can't believe the effort of getting down after work, getting the rods out, the pre-baiting leading up to it, it's all paid off. 2 fish, 26, 35, go to work, massive smile on my face, gonna be buzzing all day at work. Awesome. First 2 bites on my new cork ball pop-ups as well. Proof that my tactics and my plan's coming together nice. Right, I'm gonna get her down. She's a bit heavy, let's get her back. Here she goes. Here she goes. Look at that. Absolutely. It wasn't long before I was back on the lake. In fact, I think it was 36 hours or something. Friday night, after work. As you can imagine, I was eager to get back down and get straight back into the ski straight area where I'd had the 2 fish from the day before. So straight down the lake, straight into the swim, but sadly, as is the way on this particular lake, I wasn't able to get the rods out as quickly as I'd have liked. So it's Friday afternoon, well, Friday evening now. You know how it is. Spend all day Friday at work thinking about getting fish in. You rush to the lake full of anticipation, want to get your rods out. In this pit, unfortunately, I can't quite do that at the minute, and that's because the wakeboarders are out on the ski straight, which is the area where I've decided to fish. I caught from yesterday morning on my overnighter. These guys, they pay a lot of money to use this lake. They get preference over any fishing, so I can't put my rods out until they go in for the night. Hopefully there'll be enough time before it's dark for me to put the rods out, and hopefully the water isn't too churned up out there, that I'll hopefully be able to see the lake bed where my spots are to get the rigs in position. I finally managed to get the rods out with about half an hour of light to spare, and then as it got dark, the almighty biggest moon you'd ever imagine came up, illuminated the whole lake. It just felt like something was going to happen. It felt like a big fish would come along. However, sadly, the first bite I received of the weekend was not from the intended species. Well, good morning. Just had my first bite of the morning, and unfortunately it's not the intended species, but it is a massive tench, 8 pounds 10 ounce, well worth weighing. I thought it might have been a double. I'm just going to give you a quick glimpse of her before she goes back. Absolute beast of a tench. It's still early, it's not been light very long, so it's well into the bite time period from my midweek overnighter. Can we see that? Look at that. Absolute clonking great tench from the ski pit. Not the intended species, but still worthy of respect. Let's get her back. With the tench returned, I didn't have to wait that long until I got another chance, and this time I felt certain I was attached to my desired quarry. Well, I reckon it's only been about 15 minutes since I put the tench back. One of the other rods has rattled off, this time no mistaking it, definitely a carp. And yeah, in the sling there, it's a 21 pound, lovely long big pit mirror. Got a great big scale on one side, it's a right minter. As you'll see, it started absolutely piddling it down. So I'm just going to leave it in the edge for 5-10 minutes, wait for this rain to pass, and then I'll get her out to show you. Awesome. Lovely fish this, wait till you see that. Look at the size of that scale on its side. absolutely mint. Torpedo, big old fins, big old scale. Gave a good scrap, had to go out in the boat and get him out of the weed. Really, really happy though. That's third bite now in 2 nights of fishing this week, plus the tench, but 3 bites from carp. Awesome. Really, really happy. Look at that. Beautiful big pit mirror. Best part as always, watching them swim away. Beautiful. Here she goes. Here he goes. Here he goes. Go on. Kick in. Lovely. So with that 21 pounder returned, as you can imagine, I was really starting to feel like the plan was coming together on the lake. 3 bites in 2 nights. And as we went into Saturday night, I must admit, confidence was at its highest it had been since last spring. But I was a little bit disappointed to wake up Sunday morning. I hadn't had a bite from a carp or even a tench. But, you know, you can't get too carried away on these big lakes with low stock. You can't expect the fish to always be in front of you, and you certainly can't always expect them to be feeding when they are in front of you. So I had to pack up sort of mid to early morning. I was eager to get home. You know, I was missing Abby and the carp dog a little bit too. So I wanted to go home and see them both. But before I did, as I was leaving the complex, my mate Mickey, who fished in the lake next door, he had a stunning 27-pound common that needed photographing. So I stopped off, took a few photos for him. And I must admit, that fish really did sort of grab me and made me realise how nice the fish are in the lake next door. And it did make me want to sort of sway my course and do a few nights on that lake. But I knew in my heart of hearts that I needed to stay focused, and if I was to reap the rewards that the ski pit had, I needed to put all my effort in that one particular lake. It's worth pointing out at this time of year, I'm in the zone. I'm very selfish. Abby's very supportive, and she realises she's not going to see a lot of me during May and June. And other than work, which I always put 100% into, my focus is on my fishing. I'm not doing really any socialising with my mates, any of that. I'm just focused on trying to catch the fish. So every opportunity I can, I'm either at the lake baiting, looking, or fishing. So using some holiday, a two-night midweek session was in order. I went up to the dogleg area and there were still tiger nuts on the spot. Now, all the boilies had gone, but the tigers were still there. And to me, that was saying the tench had been in and fed, but the carp haven't. I'd looked on my phone and there was a fresh wind coming in that evening, and I thought, you know what, it's got to be worth staying put on that ski straight. It's been getting the salted boilies and the tiger nuts in that area now for several weeks. I've caught from that area, and with this new wind, I just hope that maybe some fish would drift back into that zone. And if they did, they certainly knew where they could go for an easy feed. So I stayed put, and that proved to be a fantastic decision. As I settled down for the evening, I was met by a glorious sunset. You know, I'd had the day off work. All was good in my world. I felt so chilled. And as it got dark, I started to hear the odd fish show out in the abyss, and I thought, you know what, something's going to happen tonight. Well, that decision to stay put and enjoy the sunset really did pay off, because before I had to go to work the next morning, I was rewarded with an absolute worldie of a carp. In fact, I'd go as to say it's right up there, probably in the top 10 fish I've ever caught. I was absolutely blown away with it on the bank. Loads of tiny little pin scales. Oh, well, enough talking, roll the footage. I'll let you decide for yourselves. Incredible. Well, talk about it's not over till the fat lady sings. Packing all my gear away, got to go to work. My left hand rod's just melted off. Epic battle out in the boat. I've landed a 30-pound, 10-ounce, incredible mirror, filled with pin scales, big scales. It's incredible, look at this. What a fish. I changed tactics and put both rods out on tiger nuts last night just to try and avoid the tench. The weed's that bad now, I don't want to be going out there, trying to go out there too often in the boat to re-drop rigs. So tiger nut approach, avoid tench. The carp I had a few days ago was shitting the tiger nuts out, so I know they're on the tigers. And this one proves they're definitely on the tigers. Awesome. Gonna get him back and get to work. I love me. So I'd gone back to work on that Thursday morning, and it wasn't long before I was back down the lake again. In fact, I was back after work on the Friday. As I said, this time of year, I am on it. I'm as close to being a full-time angler whilst holding down a full-time job as you're ever going to meet, I think, during May and June. So this particular session, which was now the 5th session of episode 2 of the vlog, as it were, this was the bank holiday weekend at the end of May. So I had 3 nights at my disposal. I'd have loved to have been able to take the dog with me, but sadly she still hadn't had the injections that she needed and the clearance to be able to spend a few nights at the lake with me. Unfortunately she couldn't come, but I did plan over the course of that weekend to go home, pick the dog up and take her to another lake that's otter fenced, where I thought, you know, I could start to get used to walking around the lake. There's no access for foxes because of the otter fence, so there was no danger of any disease from them. The only sort of risk was Will's disease, but I felt pretty confident as long as I didn't let the dog near the water or the water's edge, kept her well away and sort of inside the perimeter of the fence, that she was going to be okay. And you know, for me it's really important to get her used to fishing lakes and anglers as quickly as possible in her life. But before I was going to do that, the fishing was more important. So back down the ski pit after work on the Friday night. For this weekend session we had some lovely fresh winds blowing up. The conditions were spot on for big water carping. Once again the rods were going back out on the tiger nuts. And the rigs that I use for tiger nut fishing are really simple, certainly on lakes where the fish are not that pressured. Just a simple sort of knotless knot, coated braid, a medium curve hook, tiny little bit of tubing on the shank of the hook to trap the hair, and then I'll use 2 or 3 tiger nuts on a stack. So Saturday morning the bite time came and went without any incident. And then at 9 AM the boats were out on the water. With it being a bank holiday weekend, the lake was busier than normal, and the wakeboarders were out there having a great old time. So as per my plan, I reeled in, I went home, I picked up Piper, and then I headed over to one of my other syndicate lakes in Lincoln to see my good mate Tony from Oldham. He was fishing over there for a few nights. And I thought it was a great opportunity for him to meet the dog and for the dog to start getting used to a bit of fishing contact. So spent a great day down the lake with Tony, and yeah, I actually helped him move swims. The wind were hacking down into this one bay, so I helped him move swims down to this area, and the fish were showing one after the other. So I set the camera up and tried to get some footage of the fish showing, and I managed to get a couple. They didn't look very big, the ones I saw show, I must admit. But I felt sure that Tony was going to catch something, and by the time I'd been home, dropped the dog off and got back to the lake to get my rods out, I had a message from Tony to say he'd caught one. It was about £6. So yeah, I'm sorry mate, but I think that's probably one of the ones I filmed jumping, but great for him to get a bite nonetheless. Like I say, the conditions were really banging, and as I was putting my rods out on that Saturday night, I felt sure that something had to happen on the ski pit. I went through the normal routine of going to get the rods out. So took the boat out to the spots, and I've got the aquascope, and I'll just sort of drift along with the aquascope, looking at the spot and try and steady myself in the boat, and then I lower the rig down, sort of, well, I don't know why I'm using 2 hands to show that motion, I'm always using 1 hand. So I've got the aquascope with 1 hand, I've got the clutch really loose on my reel, which is in the boat with me. And thanks to the braided line, you don't get any sort of wrap around the tip, so I can just feed the lead down to the bottom, holding the aquascope, and I can literally just watch my lead and my hook bait sit perfectly on the baited area, freebies all around it, and then I can just bring the leader back, and then as I'm driving the engine back, I've just put the rod under the water and bring the line through the weed nearest the spot, try and get everything nicely concealed. In fact, whilst I was doing the second rod, I'm looking through the aquascope, just trying to familiarise myself with the area, and I noticed there was loads of rudd swimming around on the spot, and I hadn't seen any rudd up until this stage on that spot. And as I'm watching these rudd, next thing, a massive mirror carp just comes waddling over the spot, and I'm like, I didn't want to breathe. This carp comes waddling over, shows no interest in feeding at all, it's just waddling, waddling, waddling. So I've lifted my head out the aquascope and I'm sort of leaning back in the boat, and I've just watched it just swim. It hasn't spooked. Whether it's seen me and doesn't care, I don't know, but it hasn't spooked. And it's just started to waddle off in the direction of my left-hand rod, and I thought, go on, you go down there, there's a nice trap for you. So that was on the Saturday evening. Now normally I'm up at first light when I'm fishing, but doing the overnighters, doing the midweek baiting, it was all starting to take its toll on me, and I needed a lie in. So I decided to not set my alarm, and it was either going to be nature waking me up or a bite waking me up, and thankfully it was the latter. I got absolutely, it was mental. Literally, I was fast asleep, and then out of nowhere. When you're fishing with braid, your rod's up high, tight lines, and these fish that, you know, go years and years without ever being hooked. It was like an absolute wild animal on the end. I'm out, I'm running out. I've had no time to put my Crocs on or anything like that. I've just gone out, lifted the rod. For some reason, I'm already in the water. I picked the rod up and carried on sort of walking into the water. Maybe in hindsight, the fish dragged me in, it was swimming that fast. I don't know. I just remember sort of coming to, I've got a rod in my hand, clutch spinning, and I'm in the water in my bare feet. Had an almighty battle with the fish, and yeah, once I landed it, I looked and I was like, my word, this fish, it was dark, leathery, looked old as the hills. I can't believe how well my luck's going on this lake at the minute. After a blank night on Friday night, second night, very uneventful, but first light, left-hand rod has melted off. Now I've got myself 36 pound 4 ounce, incredible big pit mirror. Let's have a look, we can get her up. Look at that. What a fish. Managed to land this one from the bank despite all the weed. She came in without too much drama, steady pressure with a braided main line. She came in, gave a good account of herself under the tit, but soon she was in the net. 36 pound 4 ounce, double tiger nut hook bait again. I can't believe how well my luck's going on this lake at the moment. I love the month of May, it's the time to be out there. And big girls like this show why it's the time to be out there. I'm going to get her back, don't have to keep her out any longer than that's needed. Awesome. I did feel a bit guilty about the lack of time I'd spent with Abby, and we had planned and booked a meal for that evening with two of our really good friends, Lee and Hannah. We decided to go to our favourite restaurant, which is the Six Bells. It's in a beautiful little village not far from where we live called Witham on the Hill, and it actually employs several carp anglers in the kitchen. Now you might think, oh, carp anglers, I wouldn't want them cooking dinner for me, you know, seeing what they knock up in their pans normally down the lake. Well, let me tell you, these guys are super, super talented. The head chef, Ben, I've known him for quite a long time. He was fishing on the same lake as me over 10 years ago, and he has a passion for food like nobody else. We ordered with Ben some spare ribs as a special addition to the menu for Bank Holiday Monday. When they got served up, we couldn't believe how many there was. There was 3 racks of them, and I'm not ashamed to admit I nailed 2 of those racks myself, and they were blooming lovely. After the mains, it was dessert time. All the other guys, they enjoyed some incredible looking desserts, but I was absolutely stuffed having nailed basically the whole rib system. So I passed up on it and just admired from afar these fantastic looking desserts. But yeah, it's a great end to a fantastic weekend, and yeah, just nice being away from the lake and not thinking about fishing for a few hours. So we're now on the 29th of May. It's another midweek overnighter after work. I was a little bit late getting down the lake. I can't even remember why it was, but I was sort of pushing it to get down the lake before dark. and I ended up being out on the water dropping my rigs. I just remember a fantastic sunset going on behind me as I was lowering the rigs on the spots, and I got woken by a bite, but sadly it's quite obvious it wasn't a carp bite. Very twitchy, the old springer arm was sort of up and down, and a big load of slack line. I saw all my braid come on the surface, telltale sign that the lead's ejected and something not very big and powerful was on the end. And I managed to wind in a tench with a massive ball of weed around it, but this tench was absolutely massive. I thought it was a double, so I weighed her up, not quite a double. She went £9.1, but it's the biggest tench I've ever caught. Double tiger nut hook bait, which, you know, like I say, that tench aren't supposed to like tigers, but I think I've been putting that amount of bait in now for such a period of time. They were on the tigers as much as the carp were. Massive fish, well worth getting a photograph with, that's for sure. And then I was off to work again for a full day of grind. So as we're filming these links, we're now the middle of June, and I've done another 2 trips to the ski pit since that blank overnighter, and unfortunately both trips have been very, very quiet. I haven't been back on the pit for a few days now. I've been a little bit burnt out with it, I must admit. I've been going very hard, so I've decided to have a few days break. No pre-baiting. The weather's not been great recently, so I don't feel like I'm missing a lot. The last time I went down there, actually, quite sadly, found a very big dead pike. Matt at work, who's a bit of an expert when it comes to pike fishing, he's pretty sure it's a fish that I caught last winter over 30 pound. It was massive, that's for sure, a really big fish. And it had a jack pike wedged in its throat, and 2 big chop marks on its back. And from talking to Matt and a couple of other pike anglers, they're pretty certain what's probably happened is this big old pike's nailed a jack pike, and when they do that, they'll sit up on the surface and sort of go into a vegetative state as they digest this massive piece of food. And as it's been doing that, it's every chance that one of the boaters has hit it with the propeller and sort of cut its back, and it sort of died from a combination of choking and being hit by this boat, which is quite a sad end to a life, really. But yeah, not a nice thing to find. But yeah, it kind of puts life into perspective, though. If you're gonna screw over one of your own, expect some serious consequences. A few people have messaged me since episode 1 asking me about the stock pond. What's the score with it, Lewis? We didn't know you had a lake or whatever. And I don't currently have a lake, but I have a dream.
I have a dream.
And all right, Brad.
I have a dream.
Just call me Martin Luther. I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream. And at the moment, I'm currently in the process of acquiring a field, and the plan is to dig a lake of 2 or 3 acres and create my own piece of paradise. So I decided to acquire a stock pond. I got a lease on a stock pond. We spent the winter otter fencing it, and I've bought some fish from fantastic fish farms around the UK, and I've got these fish in the stock pond with an automated pellet feeder on, and I'm growing them. They'll probably, all being well, go into a lake in 2-3 years time, and by that time they should be considerably.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I am going to help you out with some difficult pronunciation. Considerably
bigger, and should hopefully save me a lot of money. Rather than having to buy 20s and 30s from the fish farm, I've bought singles and doubles, and I'm going to try and grow my own. Hopefully, as these vlogs go on, I'll be able to chart the progress of getting the land and digging the lake and stocking the fish and planting it and all of that from start to finish. I've got quite a few people who inspire me. Rich Wilby with his Mustang Lake in Norfolk, Pictures with his Wainstones pool up north, Blackthorn Fisheries in Shropshire. I've got loads of venues what started out as a field and have become wildlife havens and also fantastic places to carp fish. And you know, it's my dream to try and do that myself, and that's, you know, one of the reasons I work as hard as I do in my job, and I save up money, and I'm trying to work towards that. So hopefully that dream becomes reality. But for the time being, I've got the stock pond, and looking after those fish and helping them grow is my priority. So in the last couple of weeks, my mate Lee, who I took out for dinner the other week, he's been building me a solar powered aerator. The stock pond's in the middle of nowhere, it's got no electricity, so need to rely on wind power or solar power. Lee, being an electrician, has done a fantastic job in building me this solar powered aeration system. The solar panel charges a leisure battery, and then it runs a big old air stone out in the pond. Anyway, enough of my ramblings. I think I've gone on for long enough. Me and Brad have got meetings to go into now with work, so I'm going to have to sign off. Hope you enjoy this episode. Again, please comment and like if you are enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying it, tell me what you want to see changed. Until next time, hopefully you'll get out and catch a few fish. Hopefully I'll see you on the bank sometime.